The day I got married should have been the happiest day of my life. 2 years of planning every detail, perfect from the venue to the flower arrangements. But when I looked at the empty front row seats where my parents should have been sitting, I knew Caroline had won once again. She had always been the golden child. Before I tell you this heartbreaking story, leave a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe so you never miss a real-life story. Growing up as the older brother to Caroline by 4 years shaped my entire childhood. Our family seemed complete with my father, running his small construction company, and my mother teaching 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We lived in a modest 2-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania, with a large backyard where Dad built me a treehouse when I was 6. Those early years before Caroline arrived hold my fondest memories. Weekends fishing at Lake Harmony with Mom, teaching me to bake chocolate chip cookies on rainy Sundays, and family game nights, where I was the center of their world. I remember falling asleep, feeling completely secure in my parents' love and attention. Everything changed when Caroline was born with several health complications that required frequent hospital visits during her first year. Mom would spend nights at the hospital while Dad juggled work and caring for me, often dropping me at my grandparents' house for days at a time. I remember staring out their living room window, counting the hours until I could go home feeling a strange new emotion I later recognized as abandonment. When Caroline finally came home healthy, she captivated everyone with her strawberry blonde curls, bright blue eyes, and an infectious laugh that could charm even the grumpiest grocery store clerk. She became the sun our family orbited around. Family outings transitioned from my favorite science museums to carousel rides and puppet shows that Caroline preferred. Vacation destinations shifted from national parks to beach resorts because Caroline loved building sandcastles. Even dinner menus changed to accommodate her picky eating habits, while my preferences were forgotten. I still remember my 10th birthday vividly. Mom had promised me a small party with 5 friends at the local arcade. 2 days before Caroline announced her dance class had scheduled an impromptu recital that same afternoon. Without hesitation, my parents rescheduled my party to a breakfast gathering so they could attend her performance. I blew out candles on pancakes at 9 in the morning, while my friends looked as confused as I felt. Later that evening, I overheard Mom telling a neighbor how proud she was that I had been so understanding about the change. School became my refuge, where I could earn recognition on my own merits. I maintained straight A's, joined the debate team, and excelled at track and field. Each accomplishment felt like potential currency to buy my parents' attention, but the exchange rate was impossibly high. In 8th grade, I practiced for months to perform Beethoven at the regional piano competition. The night of the performance, I scanned the audience repeatedly, but my parents never arrived. Later, I learned they had attended Caroline's 2nd grade spelling bee across town instead. She had placed 3rd, and they had taken her for ice cream to celebrate. I had won 1st place and rode the bus home alone. Despite the growing evidence, I nurtured the hope that one day they would see me clearly. At night, I would imagine scenarios where my parents would finally recognize my efforts. Perhaps after college graduation, they would throw me a party and toast to my accomplishments. Maybe when I landed my first professional job, Dad would shake my hand with pride, and Mom would brag about me to her friends. These dreams sustained me through the reality of being invisible in my own home. High school graduation arrived with its cap and gown ceremony and plans for the future. I had earned a partial scholarship to the state university, covering about 60% of my tuition. When I showed my parents the award letter, Dad nodded briefly and commented that it was a shame it wasn't a full ride. Mom suggested I consider community college to save money. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes before shifting to Caroline's upcoming choir concert. That fall, I moved into a cramped dorm room with a roommate who snored, and the bare minimum of supplies. I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus bookstore between classes to cover expenses. My parents contributed the minimum amount they could while still claiming me as a dependent on their taxes. 3 years later, Caroline graduated high school with grades slightly above average and a substantial portfolio of extracurricular activities. She received acceptance letters from several schools, including an Ivy League university with a hefty price tag. Our parents celebrated with a catered party for 50 guests and promised her a brand new car if she maintained a B average her first semester. The family group text messages became a steady stream of updates about Caroline College experience, her dorm room decoration, her professors, her new friends, and her weekend activities. My parents visited her campus monthly, taking her shopping and to upscale restaurants. They had visited me exactly twice in 4 years, both times, combining the trip with other errands in the area. After graduation, I secured an entry-level position at a technology firm in Austin. The starting salary was modest but offered room for growth. I lived with 3 roommates in a small apartment, saving aggressively for my future. Meanwhile, Caroline changed her major 3 times, extending her undergraduate studies to 6 years with our parents' unwavering financial support. When she finally graduated, they purchased her a condo near campus, as she pursued a master's degree she wasn't particularly passionate about. At 27, after receiving my second promotion, I purchased my first home, a small but well-maintained 2-bedroom bungalow in a transitioning neighborhood. I invited my parents to see it, hoping for some acknowledgement of this milestone. They visited for exactly 2 hours. Mom pointed out every cosmetic flaw in the house, while Dad questioned my decision to buy rather than continue renting, suggesting the neighborhood would never improve. Neither offered congratulations or housewarming gifts. A month later, they spent $30,000 renovating Caroline Kitchen because she had developed an interest in gourmet cooking. The contrast between our treatments became such a normal part of life that I hardly registered the pain anymore. I built my career, made friends, and created a life that didn't revolve around seeking parental approval. This independence ironically coincided with meeting Jessica at a technology conference in Houston where we were both speakers. She presented on user interface design while I spoke about back-end system architecture. Our professional admiration quickly evolved into personal interest. Jessica grew up in Seattle with parents who had divorced when she was 12 but maintained a healthy co-parenting relationship. Her straightforward communication style and emotional intelligence immediately drew me in. On our third date, she asked about my family, and I found myself revealing the dynamics I usually kept hidden. Rather than offering empty platitudes, she validated my experience and shared insights from her own complicated family relationships. By our 6th month together, I knew I had found someone who truly saw me. When the time came to introduce Jessica to my family, I prepared her for what to expect. We arranged dinner at a neutral restaurant, hoping the public setting would encourage everyone to be on their best behavior. My parents arrived 15 minutes late because Caroline had called with a minor crisis about her graduate school application. Throughout the meal, they directed most questions to Jessica about her family background, as if assessing her pedigree. Caroline arrived halfway through dessert, drawing all attention her way as she detailed her latest academic achievements. After dinner, Jessica squeezed my hand under the table and whispered that she understood everything I had told her. Later in the car, rather than being put off by the experience, she expressed compassion for how lonely my childhood must have been. It was the first time someone had witnessed the dynamic and confirmed I wasn't imagining or exaggerating it. Her understanding cemented my certainty that she was who I wanted to build a future with. A year and a half into our relationship, during a weekend trip to the coast of Maine, I proposed to Jessica on a rocky beach at sunrise. She said yes, immediately wrapping her arms around me as waves crashed nearby. For the first time in my life, I felt completely certain about something. I truly belonged with this woman who loved me exactly as I was. When I called my parents with the news, Mom answered and put me on speakerphone. After a brief congratulations, she asked practical questions about dates and venues, before mentioning that Caroline was considering applying to doctoral programs that might require the family attention in the coming year. Dad offered to connect me with a financial advisor to discuss prenuptial agreements. Despite the fact that neither Jessica nor I had significant assets that would warrant such measures, Jessica and I spent the next 2 years planning our wedding, deciding on a beautiful historic venue in the hill country outside Austin. We selected a date in early October when the Texas heat would have subsided, but before the holiday season rush. Every decision from the menu to the music was intentionally chosen to create a celebration that represented our relationship. 6 months before the wedding, my mother began making suggestions that seemed innocuous at first but gradually revealed her agenda. Perhaps we could move the wedding to Dallas, which would be more convenient for Caroline, who would be attending a conference there the week before. Maybe we should consider changing our color scheme since Caroline looked particularly beautiful in burgundy rather than the forest green we had selected. Had we thought about having a brunch reception instead of an evening one since Caroline wasn't a night person? When we gently but firmly declined these suggestions, explaining our reasons for each choice, my mother grew increasingly distant. My father called one evening to discuss the financial aspects of the wedding. I had never expected them to contribute knowing their priorities, and Jessica and I had saved to cover all expenses. Dad seemed almost disappointed that he wasn't needed to bail me out financially, as if he had prepared arguments for why they couldn't help. 3 months before the wedding date, Caroline announced in the family group text that she had booked a 6-week European tour that coincidentally spanned our wedding date. I felt a familiar sting, but wasn't particularly surprised. What did shock me was my parents' immediate campaign to have us change our wedding date to accommodate her trip. My mother called daily, explaining how important this opportunity was for Caroline cultural education. My father sent emails outlining logical reasons why moving the date would be beneficial, including weather patterns and venue availability, never acknowledging the real motivation. When I explained that deposits had been paid, invitations sent, and guests had already booked travel arrangements, they suggested we have a small legal ceremony when Caroline could attend and keep the larger celebration as planned. The pressure campaign escalated until Jessica, seeing my stress, suggested we take a break from communication with my family. For 3 weeks, we focused on our excitement for our upcoming marriage, rather than the drama. When we resumed, my parents had seemingly accepted our decision, confirming they would attend both the rehearsal dinner and ceremony. Caroline remained committed to her European adventure. 1 week before the wedding, my parents texted that they would arrive Thursday evening for the Friday rehearsal and Saturday ceremony. I allowed myself a small hope that they might actually prioritize this important day in my life. Jessica's family had arrived early to help with final arrangements, her father bonding with me over basketball and craft beer, while her mother and sisters assisted Jessica with last-minute details. Friday evening arrived, and the rehearsal dinner was set to begin at 7. At 6:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Running late. Start without us. Traffic is terrible." An hour into the dinner with no sign of my parents, Jessica's dad stepped in to give the welcome speech I had hoped my father would deliver. The evening concluded and my parents never arrived. Nor did they answer my calls. At 11:30 that night, a text finally came through. "So sorry, got caught up with work thing. See you tomorrow." Big day, Saturday morning. I woke with equal parts excitement to marry Jessica and anxiety about facing my parents. At 9 a.m., while groomsmen gathered in the venue suite, my phone chimed. It was a message from Mom Caroline. Surprise. Came home early from Europe, having special lunch with her friends downtown to catch up. So excited to see her, my stomach tightened, sensing what was coming next. Sure enough, a second text followed. "Your father and I are joining Caroline for lunch. So sorry, but we won't make the ceremony. We'll try to stop by reception if it goes late enough. Caroline sends her love." I stared at the phone, a strange calm replacing the anxiety I had felt minutes before. One of my groomsmen noticed my expression and asked if everything was okay. I handed him the phone, watching his face shift from confusion to outrage as he read the messages. Word spread quickly among the wedding party, and soon Jessica burst into the room, ignoring superstition about seeing each other before the ceremony. She took my hands and looked me directly in the eyes. "Their loss, not yours," she said firmly. "The people who truly love you are all here today." I felt a mixture of profound pain and immense gratitude as I looked at the room full of friends who had shown up for us. The ceremony proceeded with empty seats in the front row where my family should have been. Jessica's father walked alone in the processional where my parents should have accompanied him. As we exchanged vows under a canopy of oak trees, I made silent additional promises to Jessica. I would never make her feel secondary or unimportant. I would celebrate her achievements and comfort her disappointments with equal dedication. I would build with her the family I had always longed for, but never received. The moment we were pronounced married, kissing as our guests applauded, I felt both a deep wound and a new beginning. 2 weeks later, after returning from our honeymoon in New Zealand, I made a decision. I needed to address what had happened, not for reconciliation, but for my own closure. I scheduled a meeting with my parents at their home, asking them not to invite Caroline. They reluctantly agreed. Sitting in their living room, surrounded by dozens of framed photographs of Caroline and barely a trace of my existence, I spoke with a calmness that surprised even me. I detailed a lifetime of being overshadowed, overlooked, and undervalued. I explained how their absence at my wedding was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of a pattern established throughout my life. I described the pain of watching them consistently choose Caroline over me, from childhood birthday parties to the most significant day of my adult life. My mother interrupted, frequently defensive and dismissive. "You were always so independent," she insisted. "Caroline needed us more." My father sat silently, arms crossed occasionally, shaking his head at points he disagreed with. When I described specific incidents, he would interject that I was misremembering or exaggerating the circumstances. When I mentioned their absence at my wedding, my mother became indignant. Caroline's return was unexpected. It was a special circumstance. How could we not see her when she made the effort to come home early? I pointed out that she had supposedly cut short a 6-week European tour to attend a lunch that could have been scheduled any other day. The math didn't add up. As the conversation progressed, it became increasingly clear that they were incapable of acknowledging their preferential treatment. In their narrative, they had been perfectly fair parents, and I was simply too sensitive, too demanding, or too unreasonable. My father finally spoke at length, suggesting that perhaps Jessica had influenced me to create problems where none existed. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Mom says you're upset about the wedding thing. You need to stop being so selfish and making them feel bad. Some things are more important than your big party." In that moment, something broke and healed simultaneously within me. I realized with perfect clarity that this dynamic would never change. Caroline would always be the golden child. My parents would always prioritize her, and I would always be expected to understand and accept my secondary position in the family hierarchy. I stood up, thanked them for their time, and told them I needed space to reconsider our relationship moving forward. My mother began to cry, not because she understood my pain, but because I was challenging the family system for the first time. My father warned that I would regret creating distance. I walked out, drove home to Jessica, and felt lighter than I had in years, despite the heaviness of what had just occurred. Over the following months, I established clear boundaries. I stopped answering every call and text immediately. I declined invitations to family events where I knew I would be an afterthought. I removed myself from the family group chat after one too many messages celebrating Caroline's accomplishments while ignoring my own. My parents were shocked by these changes. They had expected me to fall back into the familiar pattern after venting my frustrations. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I was breaking her heart. My father sent stern emails about family obligation and respect. Caroline alternated between anger at me for upsetting our parents and complete indifference to my existence. Jessica supported my decisions, completely, having witnessed firsthand the imbalance in my family. She reminded me during moments of doubt that healthy relationships should be reciprocal and nurturing, not draining and diminishing. With her encouragement, I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and childhood emotional neglect. Therapy provided tools to process my experiences without being consumed by resentment. I learned to identify and challenge the internal narrative that I was somehow unworthy of equal love and attention. I recognized patterns I had developed to cope with the favoritism, watching from the sidelines, achieving to prove my worth, and suppressing my needs to avoid being labeled difficult. Gradually, I built a life centered on relationships that reflected my value. Jessica and I created traditions and celebrations that honored both of us equally. We cultivated friendships with couples who understood healthy boundaries and mutual respect. I developed a mentor relationship with my boss, who provided the professional guidance and recognition my father never had. After a year of limited contact, my parents began to adjust to the new normal. They no longer expected me to drop everything for family gatherings on short notice. They learned that if they wanted to see me, they needed to plan in advance and respect my time. Our interactions became less frequent but somewhat more genuine as a result. Caroline continued her pattern of academic pursuits and periodic career changes, always with our parents' unwavering support. She became engaged, and then quickly unengaged, 3 times in 2 years. Each relationship collapse was met with complete understanding from our parents, while my stable, healthy marriage received little acknowledgement. This past spring, Jessica shared the news that we were expecting our first child, a development that filled me with both joy and apprehension. Would my parents show the same preferential treatment to Caroline's future children? Would our child sense their conditional love as I had? Jessica and I agreed that we would protect our child from such dynamics even if it meant further limiting family interaction. When we announced the pregnancy, my parents' response was predictably measured. They expressed appropriate happiness but quickly shifted the conversation to Caroline. Recent promotion at work. Later that week, I saw social media posts of them celebrating the promotion with an elaborate dinner. Our baby news had warranted a text message. Her job change earned a champagne toast, but somehow this no longer had the power to wound me deeply. I recognized the pattern without being defined by it. The upcoming arrival of our child has crystallized my commitment to breaking the cycle. I will never allow my son or daughter to question their worth based on comparison to a sibling or cousin. I will celebrate their uniqueness rather than measuring them against external standards of achievement. I now understand that family isn't always determined by blood. The people who stand beside you on your wedding day, when others choose lunch instead, those are your true family. The ones who listen to your dreams and disappointments with equal attention, those are your people. Sometimes the family we create through choice proves stronger than the one we were born into. Today, I can say with honesty that I wish my parents and Caroline well. I have released the desperate need for their approval and recognition that dominated my earlier years. I maintain contact on my terms, engaging when it feels healthy, and stepping back when old patterns emerge. I have found peace in accepting what they can and cannot give without expecting transformation. My relationship with Jessica grows stronger each day as we prepare for parenthood. Her parents have become the supportive family I always longed for, treating me as a true son rather than an accessory to their daughter. We are building our home on a foundation of equal partnership and mutual respect. The empty seats at our wedding that once symbolized rejection now represent the space we created for something better. Sometimes the absence of toxic patterns makes room for healing ones to emerge. The pain of being the overlooked child has transformed into the wisdom to become a more present, attentive parent to my own children. What about you? Have you ever had to create distance from family members who consistently undervalued you? How did you find the courage to establish boundaries? Leave your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family challenges. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be a priority, not an afterthought. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the most loving family is the one you choose for yourself.